You're listening to the WaxPackHero Sports Card Minute, a podcast where we discuss both the hobby and business sides of collecting. I'm your host, Mike Summer, and I want to help you buy, sell, and trade your way into a collection you'll love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the show. Today, I'm going to be talking with Joey Shiver, aka Dub Mentality. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about collecting, what he likes to collect, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about content creation. That's something that more and more people are getting into, and Dub has had some great experience going from amateur blogger to now a regular contributor to Beckett. So I thought you might enjoy hearing about how he got his start, how he went about building his reputation and getting exposure to his work, and how he went about developing and continuing to grow. We'll get into it after this. StarStock is a new trading card marketplace which is preparing to go live in April. Their goal is to be a faster and cheaper solution to sell cards, and they're looking for sellers who want to be some of the first to have their cards available for sale at launch. I'm going to be testing the platform with my own submission. They're offering a 5% sales commission with no other submission or processing fees. You send in your cards and they do all the work. Cards are insured and stored in a vault, and you can have your cards shipped to you at any time. You'll be able to buy, store, or flip cards at the push of a button. If you're interested in learning more about getting involved as a seller and getting your cards onto the site for launch, contact Mike Kuchera via email at mike@starstock.com. They're looking for sellers who have rookie and prospect cards of current players for the major sports. For more details, contact Mike Kuchera at mike@starstock.com or go to www.starstock.com. All right, welcome back from that break, and today we get to talk to another hobby legend. Joey Shiver is joining us, aka Dub Mentality. Welcome to the show, Joey.
Hey, Mike. Appreciate you having me. Hobby legend is a little bit of a stretch, but I do enjoy my presence on Twitter with all you guys. I appreciate being on the show. I consider you one of the bright minds in the hobby, and enjoy your podcast, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the term hobby legend is becoming one of those inside jokes, maybe between some of us that are friends with the About the Cards guys and things like that. That seems to be what term gets thrown around for all of us as we interact with each other, and it's kind of fun. So,
yeah.
I thought we could just talk a little bit about some of your background in the hobby and some of the things that you're involved in from a hobby perspective, and kind of just see where the conversation goes today. So maybe for some of the folks out there who may not be as familiar with you, maybe we can just start with your background in collecting. How did you get started and that type of thing?
Sure. I really began, I guess, collecting. I was a gatherer for a little while because, when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, I'm 43. Growing up in the 80s, we got cards and boxes of cereal and all sorts of things. So, I had cards laying around my house, but I really started collecting in 1988. I was in the 7th grade sixth grade. I got my first actual card that I consider a part of my collection in the 5th grade, but I started buying or having my parents buy around the 6th, 7th grade. The first card I ever got, though, that I remember for my collection was the Ozzie Smith rookie. At the time, it was only like 6 years old, but it still felt like a really old card to me. And I traded a WWF action figure for it on the playground at school. Because I really liked Ozzie Smith. Growing up in the South, we had 2 channels that we could watch, like a lot of people, I guess, probably TBS and WGN. And I watched the Braves and the Cubs, and I had just a select few players that were on other teams that I really like, and Ozzie was one of those. So it was pretty cool, and I think that's what got me really excited. And then the hobby itself took off. In 87, 88, and the quote unquote junk wax era hit. And I collected up through 98 '99 to my early 20s. And like a lot of people, it took a little bit of a time away from the hobby to do what young 20-year-olds do, which is, doesn't have anything to do with cardboard typically. But came back around probably 2008, 2009, and really, just kind of collected them, for myself during those years. A lot of my friends that I had grown up with, we had either moved to different towns or whatever, but found the Twitter hobby, a Twitter community around 2016. And that was when things were really starting to take off again. And so I've just jumped in and taken the ride with everybody else. I do enjoy writing. That's something I did as a kid. I picked up kind of what I like to write about is stories from my childhood and tying that into cards. But I think I picked that up from reading Louis Grizzard growing up. He's a Southern writer, but he worked for the AJC, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He covered sports, but he also wrote books about his childhood and funny stories and things like that. And I got in trouble a lot in school for reading those books instead of reading my textbooks. But that's kind of how the writing and baseball cards got mashed together. At the time, blogging was a big thing. Podcasts were few and far between. And so I hit the blogging scene and wrote about my life and the cards that meant things to me, and found a real good community of people that are just like me, that collected during those times, like the same players, remember the hot rookies that fizzled, all those types of things, and just kind of grown into the community here and rekindled what I had as a kid, because, like I said, I collected a lot over the years, but it's that interaction that you have with other people, the trading, the comparing players, the trash talking teams, stuff like that. It
Sure.
really makes the hobby fun. So that's a little bit of kind of how I got to where I'm at now. I just started as a kid, off and on through my 20s, and then back strong in the late 2000s, and been here ever since.
So did you write much in that first phase of collecting? Were you capturing those thoughts? Did you journal as a kid, before that, or did the writing really come into play kind of at the same time as you returned in the 2008, 2009 era?
Well, I wrote as a kid. I journaled as a kid. Not everything was about baseball cards. I wrote stories. I was very imaginative as a kid. I liked horror movies. I wrote stories, created my own characters, stuff like that. And I remember when it was just it never really, it was just something that I did. I never really thought about it being a thing until when I was in college. My term paper, one of my term papers to graduate my lit class, I wrote about the 1991 World Series, and really how what I thought the series boiled down to a base running mistake by Lonnie Smith, and I wrote a 6 or 7 page term paper on that, and aced it. And my lit teacher was like, you should really think about doing this. And so I have a job. I have a 9-to-5, but it kind of gave me that push to continue to do it. And I blogged, myself about personal things before I really integrated the cards into the blogging. But I played around with different subjects, different topics, and I really enjoyed when I started writing about the cards that I had as a kid. It was natural storytelling then for me, because these stories were real, and it was it took me back to when life was a little bit less hectic and responsibilities were a little less heavy.
Sure. Why do you think you enjoy writing so much?
Like I say, I think I don't know that, I'm not saying that I'm bright or anything, but I've always had, imagination, and it's just something that I think a lot. Some things are off the wall, but writing for me has always been a way to communicate, and I was, even with my wife, I've always been better at writing uh, um, a card for her birthday or an anniversary and telling her how I feel than I am just saying it. And so I've always just been better with a pen than I have with my own words. And so it gives me a chance to put my thoughts on paper and to really explore some things that it just makes me think about things that I otherwise might not think about as I'm writing. I just get going and I kind of get in this zone, and all these things pop into my head from when I was a kid, and I think of what fits in and what doesn't, and I just think it keeps me active mentally, uh, just processing all of that stuff. But I've just been better always writing my feelings as opposed to speaking them out loud. So I guess that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely comes through in your work. You're known as one of the highest quality card bloggers that are out there, which is, I think really saying something because there's a lot of them. I'm just curious too on, as you started, you said you wrote as a kid and you started to pivot and write about cards, upon your return, and it's something that you've always had a connection to. I'm curious, were there things that you've done to help you grow as a writer?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is reading other people's work. Honestly, there's a lot of bloggers that I look up to and appreciate what they do. Some of the things that they put um, into their thought process. I've always enjoyed Night Owl cards, Mount St. Fuji, Mount Fuji, San Jose Fuji. Sorry, I can't ever remember that. San Jose Fuji. I've always enjoyed, Ken Kinsley's got a blog roll, and I read a lot of people's blogs, and I kind of learned over the years what, especially when it comes to some of the ancillary things like photo qualities in your blog posts, and
Sure.
what is too long for people to read, and what is different things like that. And my subject matter has always been kind of unique to me, but just some of the uh, parameters of forming something that is digestible. And I still think I'm a little on the long side for people. I put a lot of memories and pre-card talk in my blogs. But I have people. The reason I do that is I have people who read my blog that read it before I was writing about cards, and they enjoyed what I was writing about. So I've kind of meshed the two together, and they work together well because I always try to tie things in together. If I'm writing about 1990 Upper Deck, then I'm going to talk about something that was going on in my life in 1990. And fortunately, I haven't run out of things. I guess that's probably not a good thing. As a kid, I probably got into too many things and did too many things I shouldn't have been doing. But I haven't run out of things to talk about as a kid yet, but I know I will one day. But made a lot of memories here on Twitter with guys too, so I start incorporating some of that as well. But I've learned a lot from different people, different blogs. But like I say, I think my original, if you've ever read Louis Grizzard, you probably see a lot of his work in what I try to do, and because he just writes about his childhood and teen years and all the things that he got into, and I've got all his books, and that's just where my style came from.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that I enjoy about it so much is you get to see that connection between the cards and your own personal experiences and your memories. And, you know, when we talk, we have these card conversations with people and we ask why they're collecting cards and why they enjoy cards. Almost every single person, part of that answer is because it brings back memories from their youth, right?
Right.
But your blogs help connect those stories and bring that out for you. You know, anybody can write about a particular set and give the stats and the figures. And that's all. There's only so much that you can say about the details of a set, but each of us have a unique experience or a unique story or connection to those cards and those sets, and getting a chance to see that and experience that and hear that from you, I think, is one of those things that really brings out and makes your stuff interesting.
Yeah, and you know, really, to what you're saying there, I mean, I'm sitting here. I've got my Ron Gant stack here because before we had our call, I was just putting some stuff that I got in a mail day together. And for me, you know, collectors today or younger collectors or people that didn't go through the junk wax era, you know, there's not really an appreciation there for it. For the most part, it's coming back a little bit, but for me, you know, I mean, I can see a 1990, you know, King Griffey Jr. tops, and I don't just see this cardboard. It brings back, it floods back, you know, me sitting in a lunchroom and trading with somebody and trying to get that card because it was the one to get, or it takes me back to, you know, an elite. I never pulled an elite out of a pack, but I had one of my best friends did, and I remember that day. I remember, you know, how cool that was and how jealous I was. It was $100 card in Beckett, and you know, it just means something. I collect modern cards too. I mean, I buy a lot of the hot stuff. You know, I look for Zion when I find it. I try to find, you know, Ohtani's, whatever. I enjoy card collecting, but I don't think I would enjoy it as much as I do if I didn't have such a connection with my childhood with those cards. I don't know that I would be a guy who just started collecting in 2017 because of Aaron Judge. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It was easier for me it's easier for me to enjoy these times with the hobby booming again because I feel like I was such a part of a big boom earlier, you know.
Right.
It was big when we were kids. I mean, it was huge, for better or worse. But you know, the cards for me, they just have a certain place in my life that is different than anything else that I have. It's the one thing that I had when I was 10 that I still have, and so that they've been with me, you know, for the majority of my life, and that means something to me. So that's kind of where my ideas and subjects come from.
Well, another big part of that boom from when we were kids is Beckett. You know, they were the hobby Bible at that time.
Right.
And for the last year or so, you've started to become a contributor to Beckett and have some articles and some work published in the magazine. Tell me a little bit about how did that come about?
Well, first of all, I still pinch myself when I see anything in Beckett with my name on it, because before I read Louis Grizzard, I read Rich Klein, and you know, I read those magazines from cover to back, the hot list, the Reader's Right, you know, everything you could read. The back 10 pages almost were card shows all over the country. I mean, it's how big it was. And so, I mean, it is the magazine of my youth. It was that and Sports Illustrated. But you know, when I came back into the hobby, when I got into the Twitter community in 2016, I had written a blog post called "Gems of the Junk Wax Era," which is still my most viewed blog post in my library. People still read it today for some reason. It pops up, I guess, when you Google junk wax. But And then when I wrote that, Ken Kinsley Beans Ball Card blog shared it, and it just started kind of rippling through, and people were commenting, and I was seeing this big boost of traffic, and I was really thankful for Ken, and we became friends. And Ken is good friends with Eric Norton, and Eric and I started communicating. Eric had a blog that was not card related, but we got to talking about things. We became friends, and Eric's with Beckett, and I just the door opened. Eric advocated for me. He enjoyed my work, and at the time, I started writing some interviews with card shops. That was sort of the first thing I did with Beckett, and they said they'd give me a shot. They'll let's start with some interviews with card shop owners, and we'll do those online. They'll be on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and let's just see how that goes. And so we put some stuff together. Over the time, was becoming friends with Ryan Cracknell, friends with the couple of the editors. Just this and that, and the opportunity came up. They asked me if I wanted to do a little more, and I told them I'd love to. And so they asked for a few ideas, and I had a few ideas. I bounced them around. I had a list of about 4 or 5 things I could write about, and the one that stuck was the junk wax journey, is what it's called now, and it's really right in my wheelhouse. It's me talking about some of the sets that were popular in the late 80s and early 90s. And I think, personally, I think we have a lot as a hobby we owe to those sets. There wouldn't be I don't think there'd be a boom now if there hadn't been a boom then. This cards were an afterthought, to a lot of people before 1987 Topps came out. And so I, as corny as it may sound, I have a reverence for that era. I used the word junk wax. I used the term junk wax era with endearment. I know some people don't like it. I don't consider any of them junk, but that's what I call it. That's a short way to say 87 to 94. But I wrote a couple pieces about some junk wax sets, and they got published, and got a lot of good feedback. I started getting emails from readers, and kind of felt like one of the gang at Beckett, and it's just kind of blossomed from there. I write monthly a junk wax piece, and then I write a weekly interview with a shop owner. We rotate between the U.S. and Canada. We started doing Canada last year, and so one week a U.S. article will print, and the next week a Canadian shop will print. So that's kind of how I got in, and it's all been a whirlwind, kind of a dream come true for me and for any real collector. The things that I wanted to be was a card shop owner or a writer for Beckett, and one of those came true for me.
There you go. And there's still time for the second one at some point. You never know.
You're right.
One of the other things I think that comes along with that increased presence, and you mentioned getting into Twitter in 2015, 2016. You're talking about now some of the interaction that you're having with other readers that have discovered you as you've been published in Beckett. It seems like some of the things that go hand in hand with being a content creator is that social media presence and kind of becoming a public figure with that. And so I was just curious, you've got a pretty strong Twitter following, and you'd been blogging for several years before that even happened. How much intentionality did you have around your online presence as it pertains to helping boost traffic to the blog and that type of thing? Was intentionally growing your online presence a part of your strategy, or is that just a byproduct of the writing itself?
Well, it certainly started intentional, with intention. when the Gems of the Junk Wax era piece kind of blew up for me, um, I started getting a lot of followers, starting to get a lot of people that wanted to talk about those sets. It led me to follow people that were already in the hobby, in the community, that were well respected, and we had this, great discussion, and it's become more organic at this point. But in the beginning, my intention was to try to get as many eyes on the work as I could, and I did a lot of different things to try to do that. I would give away some of the cards that were in the blog post. I would give away some packs from that era, whatever the case may be, to try to get more eyes on the work, and that has become, for me. I mean, I don't think you ever stop trying to promote your work, but it has become more organic at this point because, as you know, and a lot of guys who are now podcasting, and if you are who you are, you're honest, you're willing to communicate back with people, you answer questions to the best of your knowledge, you just make yourself available, then you become somebody that people will look to discuss things. And I don't know everything, but what people have learned is that if I don't, I can refer them to Ryan Cracknell, or I can refer them to you, or I can refer them to, Big Shep, or whatever the case may be. It's been kind of a weird process, but short answer is, in the beginning, yes, I was very intentional of trying to get as many eyes as I could on the work. But at this point, the eyes on the work has become secondary a little bit to what I feel like is the quality that I try to put into it, because, I've got eyes on it, and as I have eyes on it, the better quality, the more eyes you get. So, it's not really, the blog is not a business for me. It led into something I know you like to talk about a lot, self-sustaining hobby. It led into me writing for pay that has helped me sustain the hobby. And of course, that work I promote as much as I can. But the blog has become, kind of my sanctuary to just do what I want to do, write what I want to write, and put more of my. If you read my Beckett stuff and you read my blog, you will see more of my personal stuff, obviously, on the blog. For Beckett, I just really kind of talk about the sets and the time frame, and why these sets were popular, and some of the big cards in the set and things like that. But I believe social media is a huge part of anybody's exposure today. It's an obvious, necessary thing. But my intention has changed over time, I guess. I was trying to get followers in the beginning, and realized that at some point, the number of followers was less important than the quality of the followers. Not to say that any of the followers are not of quality, but the ones that will interact with you, and the ones that will actually read and will actually have thoughts, to provide you feedback and things like that. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. I found it a challenge as I was getting started a couple of years ago, first with the blog, and then, ultimately some of the other, on Twitter or wherever it might be, finding that balance between getting the exposure to the work that you're trying to put out and the quality, right? Like, quality is foundational. You have to have good quality, but if nobody knows about it, you could be the best writer ever, but if nobody knows about it, nobody sees it, it doesn't do anything. Right. It doesn't gain any traction. And so getting eyeballs on it helps, but ultimately you can run all the promotions, you can build all the following that you want, but if you're not putting out quality content, it's going to go away, and it's going to go away quickly. And so trying to find that balance of getting exposure to your content that you're creating, but at the same time making sure that what you're creating is good quality content is a delicate line to walk. It takes both, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And you know, if you get the eyes and you're not producing the quality, you're not, you're not going to keep them, like you said. And so, what I hope to have done is honed a little bit of the quality while I had 12 people read my blog, my mom and some of her friends or whatever.
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
I worked a lot on my writing when not a lot of people were reading it, because it's what I enjoy doing. It's a passion for me. I don't write to have people acknowledge me or to
Right.
have people recognize me or whatever the case may be. I write because that is what brings me happiness,
Yep.
and the cards bring me happiness. But I try to do it to the best of my ability and remember now that there are people reading. And so I need to be sure that what I'm putting out there is accurate. It makes sense. It's not, a jumbled mess in my mind, which is what it starts as. But so, the eyes came, as I was honing the quality, but now for me, it's all about being accurate, and because you never know who's reading, you never know who's going to try to take your advice or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
So I try to make sure that I'm accurate. I use resources, through Twitter, through Saber, things like that, to just make sure everything's good. And that is, I think, the most important thing to me now. And so you're right. There's a line there. There's a fine balance. But in the end, if the quality's not there, you're getting eyes for nothing. So.
You also just mentioned having a desire to try to have a self-sustaining hobby, and some of the writing now is helping contribute to that. One of the things I talk about is kind of combining both the hobby and the business sides of collecting. And so I always like to talk with people about, how much selling do you do, or what part of your overall collecting process is buying and selling as opposed to just building things for your own personal collection?
Well, I would say that I buy more than I sell, which is not what my wife likes. But I buy more than I sell. The way I kind of look at my collection is I'll build a set every year, whether it be Tops or Opening Day or Heritage. I'll pick something and I'll build it. But I spend a lot of my set oriented time working on old stuff, because there's so much out there. There's so many variations of things. There's so many. I'm working on this 91 Tops project right now that's just overwhelming. I wish, I'm so glad that I'm working on it, but I wish I had never heard about it from David Wright, that long fly ball on Twitter, because it's consumed my life. But what I do with modern cards, for the most part, I'll open a box of Prism football. I'm going to stick away the Georgia guys. If I pull something nice, I'll sell it. And if I pull some other base or inserts or an autograph that's not worth $250, I'll trade it with some friends in exchange for some other Braves or Georgia or Falcons stuff.
Sure.
So I sustain the hobby is sustained for me, self-sustainable, through writing, through trading. I get what I need to trade away things that I don't. And then I do sell, but it's not a prominent part of what I do. I admire you guys that do that. I don't know that I have the knowledge to do what you guys do. I know you're big into ComC and Sports Light and things like that, and I'm on those things. But I've always been more of a collector than a seller. But things might be different if I weren't getting paid in other ways. So I mean,
Sure.
I would be treating the hobby a little differently from a selling standpoint. But I give away a lot of stuff in exchange for things that I want. That's what we did as kids, trading. But
right.
I do sell. I pulled a Zion Hollow out of Optic. I'll have no problem selling that. Just finding the right time to do that. I pulled a Baker Mayfield Allard last year, sold it. But I have not reached the point yet where I've found, I don't know if it's time or what it is to sell more base cards. I'd like to do that eventually, but I'd like to send a package to ComC. I'd like to, but I'm writing almost every day through either the blog, working on an interview with a shop owner, or working on the junk wax piece that I've got to turn into Beckett. And so that has become, consuming enough to a point to where, between that and my 9-to-5 job, I just haven't been able to get to sell as much as I guess what a lot of people do. I do know there's some money to be made in selling cards, and that's a wonderful part of the hobby. And if you can find a way to enjoy a hobby that you love with it costing you very little in the end to do so, I recommend that to everybody, whatever that may be, whether you get paid to write, whether you get paid as a podcaster, whether you get, whether you send lots or I mean, you found a way to do a lot of it. And like I say, you're when I said in the beginning, you're one of the guys I consider one of the bright minds in the hobby right now, because if I need to know anything about selling, or if I want to figure out how something works on sports lots, I will pop on your podcast and listen to what you've got to say about it, because I don't know enough about it, and so that's where I go to the resources that do, and I'm trying to learn a little bit about it, and we'll probably dabble in that, but up to this point, selling has not been as big of a part of the hobby for me as trading and collecting and writing.
Sure. Well, what advice do you have for somebody who's considering whether or not they should start writing or creating any content for that matter, whether it be YouTube or a podcast or whatever? Do you have any advice for somebody who's thinking about getting started with that?
My first piece of advice is, and this is I guess in anything that I try to do, don't do something because somebody else is doing it and they're being successful. Do something because you like it. If you really enjoy what you're doing, whether that's writing, if you enjoy writing, start writing. And if two people read it, but you're doing what you enjoy. If you enjoy podcasting by yourself with a group, do that. Don't do things, with an expectation that, okay, if I just do this, then this will follow. Because if you don't, the people that I've enjoyed in the hobby, I've seen the passion that they have for it. They're not here to profit, and not everybody's here to profit. They're not here to profit off of something that they don't enjoy doing, I guess is what I'm saying. And so the first thing is pick something that you enjoy doing. If you don't like writing, don't try to start a blog and show pictures of cards just because, it gets exposure. If you're not tech savvy or don't know how to do a podcast, don't just decide one day, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. It's one of those things to where you just follow. Man, I'm corny today. Follow your heart. If you have a passion for something, then just do your best at it and try to promote that.
Yep.
If you are a writer, promote your writing. If you are a podcaster, promote your podcasting. If you are a card artist, promote your art, and focus on those things. Collecting cards is one of those things that just the collecting part can spread you so thin where you stop enjoying it. I mean, there's 40 card releases in baseball, and there's 40 in football, and there's 40
Mm-hmm.
in basketball, and every set has 50 variations, and every set has, autograph chases, and if it's so easy to get lost in this hobby right now, if you don't have a focus. And I think that goes along with what I'm doing. My focus is on my writing and what the hobby as a part of my writing. Part of what I do to which went to a previous question. Part of what I do to keep eyes on the dub mentality is I open packs on Periscope, or I open,
Mm-hmm.
I do my YouTube channel. I'm not a YouTube specialist, so I'm not out there pumping my YouTube channel, but it is an ancillary part of what I try to do overall to get people to trust me, to become someone that I communicate with, and that leads really to ultimately to my writing. And you just have to be intentional. These are great buzzwords: intentional on what you want to do, be focused, but ultimately do something that you enjoy. I mean, if you're a flipper, be a flipper. If you're a blogger, be a blogger.
Right.
Whatever it is that you like, do it as if nobody were watching you do it. And if you do it well, or do it from your heart, do it with passion, people will start paying attention to it, because that's what social media is. If you find real people on social media, they're generally people that you gravitate towards. And that's kind of the way I've grown. Is I communicate and enjoy interaction with people that I know are doing what they love, and they have you can just see the passion that they have. I mean, it's easy to see with you. I mean, you've created a brand that you're not flying by the seat of your pants. You're intentional about everything that you do, and it's plain to see. And that's what I gravitate towards, and that's what I would recommend to people who are looking to, however they want to make a name for themselves in the hobby, to do the same.
I think that is some great advice. Where can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for people to connect and see the content that you're creating?
Well, my biggest presence is on Twitter, and at Dub Mentality. My blog page is also dubmentality.com. My YouTube channel is Dub Mentality. So if you just search for Dub Mentality, you're likely to find me. The only place that I'm I guess me is like Instagram. So I don't have a Dub Mentality Instagram page, but you can find me anywhere just searching Dub Mentality. And I'm in I'm in Beckett. If you search their page and want to read something I've written, you can just search my name in Beckett. And I appreciate anybody who takes the time to read what I write. Again, I do it for me, but it's a blessing and humbling to know that a lot of people do read it and have the same thoughts and have the same memories and have we all have these commonalities that we didn't know we have. And it's opened up a big world for me, where I'm talking to somebody in Illinois, and I'm friends with people in Texas. I'm friends with people in California. It's just been a real blessing for me and a treat to be doing what I'm doing. And I don't take that for granted. It could go away tomorrow, but I appreciate everybody who has been along for the ride. And I appreciate you having me, Mike.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and it's been a great conversation. It's been a lot of fun. I'm glad we got a chance to capture it for the listeners to hear. I think we covered a lot of great things, and thanks again for coming on.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Wow. If you are a content creator, I think there is some great takeaways that Dub had for you as you pursue your passion, as you develop your craft, as you intentionally try to get better and be true to who you are and tell your story. And so thanks again to Joey for coming on today. And thank you for listening, and thanks for sticking around to the end. I want to encourage you to also check out the Hobby Hotline. That's our live call-in show that we do every Saturday morning. Check it out at Hobby Hotline on Twitter to find out more. And I would appreciate any feedback that you've got for me or that you've got for Joey. Reach out at WaxPackHero@gmail.com or follow me at @TheMikeSummer on Twitter and let me know what you think of the show. I'd really appreciate it. Take a second to rate and review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. I'd appreciate that as well. And I will catch you next time.